Hi, this is Melissa Rondo, and this is the True Crime Therapist podcast. I am with Holly K. Dunn, who is a survivor of a serial killer. Thank you, Holly, for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a real honor that you're going to share your story here. And when you're ready, tell us what happened to you.
Sure. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but when I was a student at the University of Kentucky, I was a junior and I had just met a boy over the summer that I was really interested in. We were just starting to get like first dating, excited.
Yeah.
And we decided to go to a party not far from campus one night in August, and it was August 28th, 1997. And we encountered a evil person that night. We were walking to the tracks to try to, we were at a party and we were bored. So we walked to the tracks, and when we got up to leave, a man approached us and asked us for money. And it's crazy to talk about it now because it all seems so surreal. It especially now thinking about it, it all seemed just, you know, especially in hindsight, thinking like, what the different things that I could have done, but you feel so paralyzed in that moment, especially when a weapon is involved. And it's really hard to describe especially to anybody that's never been encountered with a weapon, kind of that mentality of you give this person what they want and they leave you alone, and that's kind of I think what we were thinking, like, we don't have any money, which we didn't. He asked us for money, we didn't have any money, but we're like, we have ATM cards, we have credit cards, we have a car, like, that thought process of we'll give you what you want and leave us alone. But he wasn't really making sense, and he just kept saying no to all of our offers, and it just didn't make sense. You're going, then what do you want? Like, if you don't want a car, a credit, if you don't want the stuff, like, what do you want? And eventually and I didn't realize it at the time, but he was using, and I didn't see the weapon at first, but he was using that weapon to, like, tie up Chris's hands behind his back. He tied up my hands behind my back with my belt. So he automatically started to, make sure that we were weakened by, doing these things to tie us up and keep us from doing things, right? So, and I noticed that he pulls Chris into the ravine next to the tracks, and I just follow him down there because I noticed that it hurts, and I'm like, I don't want to be pulled down there. So, and it wasn't far, it was only a few feet, but he pulls Chris down to the ravine, and he ends up tying up our feet with some sort of ripped shirt or something. He ties up Chris's feet with like a strap that he found probably on Chris's backpack. And he, and in the minute, from the time he tied up my hands, I'm trying to get them untied, right? Like, I'm automatically like working to get them untied. They're behind my back, but I'm working to get them untied. And so, but I don't want him to see that, because he ends up making gags for us too. But like, when he tied the gag, I don't know what made me think to like stick my tongue out really hard. And so the gag couldn't tie tightly around my mouth so that I could still talk, because I thought I have to be able to talk. And so the gag, every time he tried to tie it, which he kept getting so angry that the gag wasn't working. But I was like, I didn't act, I'm like, I don't know why it's not working. Like, I don't, I don't know why either. Like, trying to like play dumb. Right.
Yeah.
And I even get my hands untied, but I keep my hands behind my back and hold on to the belt to try to make it look like my hands were still tied. And so I'm constantly, this person is like over us, but then he would leave us and he would go to a bag or something he had. And so every time he would leave us, even for split seconds of time, I'm trying to like get my feet untied. I'm taking Chris's gag off. I'm trying to get his hands untied. Like, I'm constantly trying to do things to get us away from this person. Right.
Yeah.
And he ends up, and he's saying crazy things. He's not making any sense. Our attacker is not making any sense. He's not, I can't make any like headway with him and talking to him, right? So it's nothing's making sense, and everything I'm trying to do, I can't get my feet untied, I can't get Chris's hands untied. It just felt like it was just mounting, like I couldn't, everything I was trying to do couldn't do it, right? And so I mean, I remember one time when he comes back, I'm still trying to act like I'm tied up. I'm, trying to be a good victim, right? And
Yep.
but he's carrying something heavy and I can't really see what it is. It was really dark that night. I couldn't really see what it was. But he takes it, and whatever it was, he just takes it and lifts it up high as he can and drops it on Chris's head. And Chris was really close to me. And I truly, I mean, even in my mind, I thought it happened like many times, because I think I just kept replaying it in my mind, right? Like this actually just happened, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think at that moment I went into, I guess, a fight mentality, because I'm like, well, if I'm gonna die, like, let me die fighting, right? Like, so he comes over to me and I had my hands untied. So I start like trying to punch him and like kicking him. But I mean, my feet were still tied, but I'm like trying to like knee him in the groin, and I'm trying to like hurt him somehow. I'm trying to bite him. And he stabs me in my neck, and he says, whatever that was, and he says, "Look how easily I could kill you." And so I stopped, and I heard Chris gurgling, like making a gurgling sound. And, Chris was a few feet from me, and I said, "Go turn his head to the side so that he doesn't choke on his own blood." And he actually went and did it and came back to me and said, "He's gone. Don't worry about him anymore." And so he climbs on top of me again, and he takes off my pants and he rapes me. I mean, and truly, I was not feeling anything. I didn't feel when he stabbed me in my neck. I didn't feel the rape. I was floating above my body, that feeling of this isn't reality. I am somewhere else right now. But I do remember like thinking the whole time that this was happening, I'm going to memorize your face. I'm going to know I'm going to look at you and I'm going to know every tattoo you have, every scar you have. And I'm talking to him. So I'm saying, "What's your name?" Like, he gave me a fake name. And I said, "Here, what's my name?" I gave him a fake name. But I said, "I've got a family that really wants to see me again." I said, "Do you have a family?" Like trying to get him to talk about himself. And I think that was annoying him too, that I'm like that, I'm trying to like humanize myself, right? And so he, even after, and I thought I had convinced him that he wasn't going to hurt me. I thought that I had convinced him that he wouldn't hurt me and that he would leave me there and I would never tell anybody what had happened. I thought that I had convinced him of that, and tried to like befriend him, right? And he ends up, and I don't remember ever being hit, but he ended up, he actually put my pants back on for me, because I thought, if I'm found here, I don't want to be found naked. So he actually put my pants back on for me, and which was crazy because it was, my pants were inside out. So he had to like, he turned them right side out. Like, just the thought of like somebody taking the time to do that kind of thing, like to turn your pants right side out and help you get them back on. It seems so trivial, but like such a big deal in this moment of this trauma, right? And
Right. Yeah.
so he's doing things that I'm asking him to do. And so he did that. And I can remember like trying to dig my hands into the ground, because I thought, if I'm taken away from here, I want somebody to know I've been here. And so like I'm digging my hands into the ground, and he ends up hitting me, and I don't remember being hit. I remember him taking one of my rings, and he took one of my earrings. And then he hit me, and I don't know if they ever found, I think he hit me with some sort of board. I don't know if they ever found, I didn't ever see what he hit me with. But he hit me 5 or 6 times in my face, broke my eye socket, broke my jaw. And then I think I put my hand up to block it because my hand was swollen. And then I think I turned over and he hit me 5 or 6 times in the back of my head. So I think he completely knocked me unconscious. And I think I don't know how long I laid there before I got up to get help. I think he knocked me unconscious, but I remember even thinking when I was unconscious, like, I'm going to get you. Like, I'm still alive. And I remember every detail of your face, and I'm going to get you someday.
Oh,
And just thinking like that, even as I'm like passed out, from being hit, but, and I don't remember even being hit. And I wasn't feeling anything. Again, I didn't feel any of that. So, but I'm unconscious. And then I don't know how long I laid there before I got up to get help. I don't know how long I laid there before he left and thought he had killed me. And he thought he had killed me. But I got up to get help. I walked about 100, 200 yards to a house that had the TV on. And I walked into the person's house. I didn't ring a doorbell. I didn't knock on a door. I just walked straight in. And he called 911 for me. I'm sure he was completely freaked out. He was a student at the University of Kentucky too. And I'm sure he was completely freaked out, didn't know if I was going to die, didn't know if I was, if somebody was still after me, like he didn't know.
right.
But so he called 911 for me, and I was rushed to the hospital. I mean, I did things, and I remember doing this. Like, I don't remember the ambulance coming, and I don't remember like being put on the gurney, but I remember being in the ambulance and like asking the ambulance driver. I mean, I was saying like my friend's still out there, meaning Chris, because I knew he was still out there. But I asked the guy in the ambulance to stop by McDonald's and get me a cheeseburger on the way to the hospital because I was hungry. I'm like, I use humor as a defense mechanism. And I mean, I was using it even in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Like, that is how I mean, I've always done that. But I wanted to feel like myself again, like immediately, right? Like this horrible thing can't change me, even in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, right?
Do you
So
think that helped you to survive?
I think so. I mean, I think that humor as a defense mechanism for me has helped me in a lot of ways. It's also been a bit of a, hard thing to figure out, because I use it at the most inappropriate times, but for me to know that I use it now and to have that awareness, I can work through it. But, when I was doing it and didn't really realize that's what I was doing, it wasn't as helpful as other forms of dealing with things can be. So, but I think it has helped to get me where I am today. And I think if you really look at my survival and my healing, the big factors, I think, in why I've gotten to where I am today, to be, now 26 years later, to be able to talk about this and do this kind of work that I do, I attribute it, a big part of it, to my support system, because I think I had the most amazing support system in not only my family and my friends, but strangers, everybody that was praying for me, that was supporting me, right? I think
Sure.
that was huge. I think I got, if you think about it now, I got complete justice. So I mean, that justice that I got helped me in my healing. I mean, it wasn't swift or anything, but it in the journey of healing, I think that really got me to be able to do what I do today. And I think a big part of it was, you know, Chris's friends, because I lost, Chris died in that attack and I lost him, and Chris's friends really helped me grieve him in, in my healing. And I think it was, a big part of it was also just I don't know, wanting to, my resilience. I think if you could call it something. I mean, I had been through some hard times in my life already, some hard things, and kind of saw how my family dealt with that. And so I had kind of, it was kind of modeled to me a little, nothing this traumatic, but still hard things that your family kind of models to you how to be resilient and how to get through that. And I think that I was taught that. And I think that probably the biggest thing was being able to talk about it and being able to get it outside of me, because I had to get it outside of me so quickly, because I had to tell my family immediately, right? I mean, they wanted to know what had happened. I had to tell the police what had happened immediately. Like, it was such a, you don't have a choice, really. You have to talk about this kind of mentality that I think helped me to gain control over the story, because I believe when you go through any kind of trauma, being able to talk about it, and not necessarily talk about it, get it outside of you somehow, whether it's doing art or singing singing a song, or what those kinds of creative things that you might do, or write it down in a journal, talk about it in therapy, talk about it to a friend, just talking about it, getting it outside of you loses its control over you. And I think that I didn't even realize it when I was doing it, that I was gaining control over my own story every time I was telling that story. And so it was losing its power over me, and I was gaining power over it was my own story to tell. And I think that was a key in my healing.
Yeah, for people that are listening or watching, I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a trauma expert, and you hit the nail on the head with that, because the research actually shows that the quicker a rape survivor can tell their story, the prognosis for recovery is actually faster, because it's a way for you to get your power back. It's
Right.
one way for you to get, and another thing too, when you were talking about the assault and how you sort of had that floating feeling where you didn't feel anything, for people that don't understand the neurobiology of rape, the body has an evolutionary way of responding to threats and assaults, and our body releases opioids very naturally, which is why a lot of rape survivors like yourself, you get that feeling of I can't feel anything. It's because your body is protecting you naturally on a neurobiological level.
Yeah, and it was pretty amazing because I felt it all once I got to the hospital. So once I was safe
Yeah,
and, was at the hospital, I felt it all.
yeah,
So I mean, I
yeah.
know, and I talked about it more like adrenaline, but I'm sure that it's kind of the same thing, but like
Yeah.
it's that feel it my body did that on its own. Like, I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to think any certain way. It was all like that was instinct. Right.
Sure.
So, but as soon as I got to the hospital and I felt safe, then I felt everything. And it was like a weight. I felt a weight on top of me as soon as I
Right.
got to the hospital.
You said something in your book that literally blew me away. Like, your book, I actually want to show it. I know people listening, it's Soul Survivor, but this is it right here. Something that I want to I want to educate like nursing staff and investigators that, that you had a well-intended nurse who was like, "Hey, don't talk about it." And you were like, "I needed to talk about it." So I thought that was a really amazing point of like, don't assume what the survivor needs.
Right. And I mean, the hospital, even, and this was in 97. I think things have changed now, but they even told my family and friends not to cry in front of me,
Mm,
which was super weird because, you come
yeah.
upon your friend who doesn't look like herself, like she's all messed up, and don't cry. Like, what are you going to do? Like, when you start crying, run out of the room. That's better. Like, I don't know, I just, what people were saying, what they thought was going to help. And you're just going, that
Right.
doesn't help at all. Like,
Right. Yeah, I thought that was so amazing. And then also, if we can go back for a second, your body is going to do whatever it thinks it needs to feel safe in that moment. If it feels the safest thing to do is fight, it's going to fight. If the safest thing to do is to flee, it's going to flee. Also, to play dead, have a freeze response. So I just wanted to clarify one thing too. Did you actually have like tonic immobility where you felt frozen and you were playing dead and looking dead, or you truly looked dead to your attacker because you were completely unconscious?
No, I think I was completely unconscious.
Okay.
I don't there was a moment, I think it was before I woke up,
Yeah.
that there was a moment of I'm going to lay here and not move until I know he's really gone thought process, that, but I think that was right before I got up to actually get help. So, there was a moment of, I think I'm going to stay like this until I know that he's really gone.
So it was like a combination of both.
Right.
It's like I really am unconscious and I'm also frozen right now in a survival way to make sure he is gone. And another question too, he kept saying, but for people that don't know, the serial killer that attacked you was known in the media as the railroad killer. Um, he kept saying, well, I have a friend. Do you think that was just a ruse to give you the impression that there was more people that could control you if you tried
Yeah,
to
I
speak?
think it was a scare tactic. Yeah, he said some really crazy things. Like, I mean, he was saying he broke out of jail. He had just broken out of jail, and that he had a friend that was bringing him food, and he'd be back any minute. I think it was all just a scare tactic. Like that there might be somebody else, and they'll help me when they get here, kind of
Yeah.
thought.
So don't try to like run away and don't try to fight me because I'm this big bad guy that just broke out of jail and I've got friends here.
Right.
I got you. This is the most, for a lot of people, including myself, the most unimaginable horror that anybody can go through. Um, and now you started to talk about the what happened after the attack. Can you talk about um, some trauma that you experienced, like triggers, and maybe how you coped with that? And also, I'm really interested because I've shared with you I'm also a rape survivor, and what's been hard for me is over the past 21 years since my attack, sometimes the triggers come on a random day, a random time, and I'm just like, "Oh, this is a new one. I didn't know this was gonna trigger something." So I was curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, I had really obvious triggers in the beginning, like the three trains went by during the attack, and so trains were a really big trigger for me. Just to go over tracks was a really big deal for me. If I was driving and I would go over railroad tracks, like I'd shut down and not be able to speak and break out into a cold sweat, have basically a panic attack. Um, but I started to notice that this was happening. Like you know, when I would hear the sound of a train and like I'd shut down and not be able to talk to my friends, I'm going, what is up with this? Like, I started to realize that this was not something that I wanted to happen. It wasn't necessarily that I thought it was weird. It was just that I thought, like, I don't want this to happen, So I think I was really trying to work through my triggers as soon as I noticed them. I mean, I think, and I know that's not something that probably everybody does, but I just knew, but wasn't that easy. I did have to do a lot of I joined a support group that really helped me work on some of my triggers, a lot with trains, a lot of like keeping a knife beside my bed because I lived alone and I thought somebody was going to come and get me, like those kinds of things that are maybe more of a heightened awareness than a trigger that was. But I think the biggest one for me was trains and this, like, there's smells that can really get to me. Like the smell of flowers, because at that time in the hospital, I had this tiny little single room. And I mean, I got probably 100 things of flowers. And I mean, my whole room smelled like that. So when I get into a room or when I go to a funeral now and I smell that smell of a room full of flowers, like, I mean, I'll just get taken right back to the hospital. So I mean, but I know that. And so, I mean, I'm prepared for it kind of, like and now with trains, I mean, I have two sons, which my first son was absolutely obsessed with Thomas the Train. And I know that was sent so that I could get through my train triggers. I mean, I had been doing really well, but still it could bring me back. And so I had my son who loved trains, loved everything about trains, loved Thomas the Train, wanted to go see trains, ride trains. I'm like, okay, well, if you ever have to work through a trigger, it is right now, because you're going to take your kid to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So I did. But I think, like, I haven't had maybe as many triggers as you might think. And they really come fewer and far between now. I feel like I mean, and not to say that they don't come up, but it's like when they do, I get like a little, I don't know, a little, like something will occur. Like when I'm feeling like a panic or overwhelmed, I'll get like my Chris's parents gave me a wind chime. And of course I keep this wind chime now on the porch because I don't want to listen to a wind chime outside. But like when I did keep that outside, and especially this was in the beginning of my recovery, that if I was starting to feel that panic attack, like that wind chime would chime. And I mean, like clockwork,
Mm.
like it's like that. I don't know what that was. I don't know. It could have just been the wind. But there's something to that there was always something to like that would happen that would like take me out of it. And that's what's amazing is that, you know, I would notice those little things that could help me like snap out of it. And you know, and I can't explain them. And so, you know, I'll just like to think that it's like Chris sending me little signals and like telling me, you know, Chris's last words to me were everything's going to be okay. Cause he was really just trying to calm me down and like keep me, you know, from going like getting wild and wanting to like hurt something, you know, like he had a calmness to him during the whole attack that I'm just like, where did this come from? Like, I was just like, his calmness like helped me to stay calm. And I mean, you know, when he said everything's going to be okay, he meant it for me. I mean, that he was talking to me and I think he's helping me now.
Can we call it like a spiritual presence in your life now? So when you feel that anxiety come up or panic, that calmness of Chris just kind of comes over you. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. That's really beautiful. Oh, that's very touching. Yeah. So, so you did survive this, and there's a reason. What do you think was that reason on a deeper level that you were meant to survive this?
Well, you know, I think I made a decision in the hospital. I can remember this moment of like making a decision in the hospital where I'm going, all right, I've got two choices here. I can crawl in a hole and not come out again, and people are going to think that's just fine because this is a lot, and I could crawl in the hole,
Yeah.
or I can do something. And it's like there was these two choices, and those were it. And so I was like, I'm just going to choose. I don't even know what it means or why, but I'm just going to choose to do something. And I'm going to keep choosing to do something, whether that's just getting up every day and breathing and finding a reason to smile, you know, and there's sometimes that's all I need to do. You know, especially in the early days of healing, that when the days were really hard, it meant a lot to just wake up in the morning and like take a deep breath, right? And then that day find some reason to smile, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it could be as small as that, but that do something, it's like a choice. And I think I thought of that in the hospital, that I'm going to make that choice to do something. And I think I've done that every day since this attack, is that I've always chosen that path of doing something.
Yes.
So you know, it's a choice, and I feel like I can choose to you know, do what I'm supposed to do. And you know, I at first I didn't know why I survived, and I had a lot of survivor's guilt. I'm thinking, you know, all these people died, including Chris, and why am I here? And really had kind of a struggle with it. But you know, I saw the empowerment that it gave me to talk about it, and to talk about it to groups, and to talk about it to, you know, the first time I did it basically was at a religious retreat, but the second time I did it was to 700 people at one time. And you know, if you had told me when I was in college that I was going to like speaking for a living, I would have thought you were crazy. But you know, I realized the power because it was healing me, and I was helping other people. And, you know, I think my parents did a good job of helping me to know the difference you can make in helping your community that you live in and giving back. And, you know, my parents modeled that for me. So, I mean, I saw that growing up, how powerful that was to, you know, for yourself to give back and to help others. Right. And so I was doing this speaking, and it felt so good for people to come up to me and be like, you know, I had this happen, and you're so brave to share. Now I think I can share, or you know, I haven't dealt with what happened to me, and maybe I can do a little of that now. Like, thank you for being so brave. And you know, at the times when I didn't feel so brave and so strong, it's people's words and people's like encouragement that got me there. I mean, I probably couldn't have gotten there had they not been telling me that you are this brave person, like you can do these things. And I really, at times when it did get really hard, I leaned on those people, right? I mean, I'm leaning on they're the ones that are holding me up. Like I couldn't have asked for anything better in my healing, to be like, I'm helping others while I'm helping myself. And I seeked out books that were written by survivors in my healing, like 100%. I read every single book I could find that was written by a survivor of sexual assault. And that, to me, because I felt the most power in others that had been through something similar. Now, I didn't feel like anybody's story was like mine, but there were people that had been through some things. And so to read other people's books for me was so powerful, to know that everything you're doing, because you feel like you're going crazy sometimes, right? You feel like you're absolutely going crazy. And then to read somebody else's words that they did the same thing, or that they were feeling that, or that they did something a little different, but almost the same. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going crazy. Like, I know why I'm doing this, and I can work through it because I know now why I'm doing it. It just, books for me and support groups were huge in my healing. I mean, the support groups that I've been in have taken me leaps and bounds. And now I go to therapy. I mean, therapy for me when I was 20 was not what I needed. I needed other forms of healing. But therapy now is super important. I just see, I mean, and I'm going to be on this healing journey for the rest of my life, right? When I talk about the journey, it is that's why they call it that, because it is just such ups and downs and way ups and way downs. And, it's all over the place. And, there are still hard days, and there's going to be hard days. And I know that. So I do extra things on those days for self-care. I try to take care of myself, and just maybe my family knows that these are hard days for me, and they just know mommy might not do all the things she normally does. And we all just kind of get through it together. And I think, having, I don't know, a support system, even if it's just one person, having that one person that can help you is like life-changing. I mean, I think that can be the difference in doing something and not doing something. Can be somebody that just actively listens and lets you say whatever you want to say. That is like so powerful. And that's, I think, what I felt in my healing, that people were that sounding board for me. And I mean, I didn't even think my parents knew that they were doing that. They just didn't even know what to say. Right. And that's for a lot of people, for me, they just didn't know what to say. So they just wouldn't say anything, which was probably the best thing they could have done, that they let me talk, and they didn't try to say anything. So, and that's active listening, and being understanding and giving a little grace can be very hard to do.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's true. It's just creating a safe space for someone, and however you're needing to cope in that moment, support that, and active listening and validating, believing and validating, because your experience is real and you need that. That's really powerful. And I want to personally thank you. You've been an inspiration to me, because as a therapist, I have worked with rape survivors, but I haven't been able to find my voice to talk about my own, except to a close group of friends and family. So I want to personally thank you as well for being inspiring to help me find my voice.
Well, thank you. And that, that's a hard kind of a gray area, because you don't ever, and that I do that too, is that I don't ever want my story to overpower somebody else's story. Like, if they're telling me their story, I'm not going to tell them mine, because I don't want to overpower. People always say to me, my story is not as bad as yours. I'm like, your story happened to you. It was just as bad. Like, this was your life. Like, it destroyed your plans, whatever. I was like, it's still horrible. We're not doing comparison here. It can be really hard. My friends that have taken positions where they're hearing people's stories all the time, I'm like, I love that you're doing this. And if you're, in therapy, or if you're a social worker, if you're a advocate for sexual assault victims, I'm like, I'm so thankful that there are people like you. But and I know self-care is such a buzzword right now, but self-care is truly so important for people, that especially when you hear, because that's really why I'm not part of the advocacy center that I helped create anymore, because I couldn't keep hearing the people's stories. People's stories were really affecting me, and I couldn't keep hearing them, because maybe not that I was going on a bad path in my healing, but I could have, right? I mean, if I had kept hearing people's stories, I might have developed some bad coping skills, right? And, I've always tried to have positive coping skills. And so you're doing a hard job. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And so you're referring to the advocacy group, Holly's House.
Yes. Holly's House is an advocacy center in Evansville, Indiana. And we basically provide a safe location for victims of intimate crimes. We want to empower them. And we serve as that forensic interview location for victims. So, if if a child is being interviewed, or if an adult sexual assault victim or domestic violence victim is being interviewed, they do that at Holly's House forensically. So that it's admissible in court, so that it's stronger in your court case, but also it's victim friendly, so it's we're not trying to re-victimize or trying to make things harder on a person that's gone through this most terrible probably day in their life. And when you encounter somebody in that moment, we just want to provide care and give them a safe place.
Yeah, that's amazing work that you're doing there, and that's something else that I heard. I can't remember if I heard you say this in another interview or in the book. I'm sorry for a moment, but you said something I thought was also very powerful. That there's a lot of women that are rape survivors, but the rapist was not a stranger. And how can you talk a little bit about your experience with that? Like how it's more people don't believe them as much, or they doubt themselves, or
Yeah. So, I mean, stranger rapes are the smaller percentage of rapes that occur, right? So, I mean, most rapes and sexual assaults that happen are from someone probably not only just somebody but maybe a loved one, right? A person that you loved, right? And it creates such a gray area. I think for me and in my healing, there was no gray area because I could very much see the two different sides. So this is, not intimate. This is a terrible person who created this evil over here. And over here is an intimate, loving, wonderful man that is a good person, right? And I could very much distinguish the two. But for most people, that's all blurred and that's gray because it is somebody you love. And I mean, I didn't have to ever deal with that because I could very much see them as two different things. I would think it's much more difficult to try to not blur the two when you've been hurt by someone you loved or somebody you knew, even a friend, anybody. It blurs the lines so much, and I think that there's a lot of work that has to be done in a different kind of healing to work through that, to be able to get into a healthy, good, safe relationship. There's probably a lot more work that has to be done and a different kind of work in your healing to get through that gray area. And I think that it takes probably a little bit more work on your part to try to not, make sure that those lines you can then differentiate the two, because when they're blurred like that, I think it causes different healing that needs to happen.
yeah, that's so well said. I hope there's somebody listening right now that can really find that really healing, because you're right. Like, right, that gray area for you, it's like, okay, this is a evil person. This is a killer. This is clearly a rape, stranger, had all the elements, right? It's very clearly what it is. But like you said, the first step for someone in that gray area, their first step is not their coping strategy or their other ways to recover. The first step is, this is rape. I
Right.
was raped, and owning that, believing that, and that's the catalyst for the healing. That's the first step. Yeah. So the other question I had for you is, right now in our society, there's a lot of talk of true crime and people get fascinated with it. I have my own reasons. I think people get fascinated, particularly women, because they want to listen to stories like yours and think, well, what would I have done? Or how could I keep myself safe? Or how would I have reacted in that moment? And not that they're passing any judgment at all. They're trying to think it out in their minds, right? So I was curious, do you follow true crime stories, or um, you know, do you even think twice maybe before, maybe going for a walk alone in the woods. Like, I'd like to know too how your interaction with the true crime world now.
Well, I don't think it's a bad interaction with the true crime world, because I've always talked about my experience because I know it creates awareness. And if you have an awareness, maybe you're going to make a different decision that isn't going to put you in that spot that this is going to happen, right? So it's the awareness that is making you safer because you are going to make different decisions. And I've always said that. And I think what true crime has, because it's become so big, and I don't necessarily, I think it's good and bad. I think one way it's bad is that kind of numbs us. I think we're a little numb to that these things are actually happening to people that are, your sister, your mom, your loved one, it's somebody that it happened to. I think it changes things and it helps like alleviate that numbness that can kind of happen being a kind of following true crime. But I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, because I think it does help create that awareness. And all this true crime that's coming out, it creates an awareness of these things that can happen. And then when you have that awareness, you can make different decisions. And maybe it will never happen to you, or that you have the awareness that if it did, you could do this and do something different, or I don't think that that's a bad thing. So I think it's good and bad. I can't say it's a one way or the other, leaning the one way or the other, but I do not really follow it much. It does not bring me a lot of excitement. I do have a friend that loves it, and I've gone to things with her, like, CSI events, and it doesn't bother me to do things like that. It's not something that I would choose to do. I will go with a friend. I will, pay attention if it's somebody I know. I will listen to whatever they do. But it's not something that I would seek out to try to watch or am interested in. But and I that is probably because of what I've been through. And I think I find the, not necessarily the flaws, but like, I get annoyed. I always got annoyed with my own story when people would get details wrong. And I still get annoyed now today if somebody gets a detail wrong. I mean, I've heard podcasts that have been done about me, and they're, and people do great research, and a lot of them are really fantastic. And I've not heard one yet, even to this day, that was terrible, but I've heard ones with like little mistakes, and I'm like, oh, you get it
Yeah.
wrong. Like, no, that's not right. Like, and it makes me want to message them and be like, put a correction in, like, you got that wrong. But I'm not going to do that. I think it is all good. It's a good thing that we have the awareness. And, I am not going to fault anybody for thinking it's interesting, or and following it and thinking that it gives them entertainment. That's not a bad thing. I mean, I think, we need things in our life that make us feel joy and make us feel like, we're going to be okay. And, if that's what your thing is, more power, do it. It's just not mine.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. And I could see that. I think that's a normal response to be frustrated if you hear something about your story that's not accurate, because it's, again, it could create a feeling of powerlessness or losing control again. And that your story is your story. And that is really important. And what happened to you and the details are important. So I can
Yeah,
understand.
but truly what they get wrong is maybe
Yeah.
something later on, I mean, something in my healing, or it's not usually the story they get wrong, because I have told that so many times. It's like maybe another part. And it could be like this minuscule little detail that
Yeah.
nobody else would care, but I know,
But yeah, I got
yeah,
you.
it truly, and no, I would never tell anybody that they did that. There's such small things that it doesn't even really bother me,
Yeah.
except in that moment, right?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. And for me, like, my intersection with the true crime world is really spreading education. Like, like, if you ever now, because we live in the day and age of video clips and body cams, a lot of people might be watching a video of a sexual assault survivor being interviewed, and they start judging her reaction to the questions, or she seems, somewhat incoherent, or the story is a little patchy, and I want to
But
educate
she's
people.
making jokes. Like, what's that about, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And it's a trauma reaction. So, like, for me, if people are going to be in this world, I wanted them to be educated. Well, that woman was just sexually assaulted and she's having a trauma reaction and that affects her memory. So no, it's going to take her some time to put all those pieces together into a story that she can tell that makes sense to you because right now her brain is scattered from the trauma, right? So I hope that's one way to impact it. And so I am curious. So like, has it impacted you now, even now to be a little cautious, like to go jogging in the woods by yourself, not that you go walking, or being careful. Are you extra cautious even now?
I would say yes. I mean, if you talk to my family, I am a door locker, like a obsessive door locker. I mean, I probably would lock you out of the house if you walked outside kind of door locker. And I think that that is a response from what I've been through. But and I think I was a bit of a helicopter parent with my first child. I think I definitely, followed him around and made sure he didn't fall and didn't want him to get hurt. And but I have two boys and I mean, they are going to hurt themselves no matter what. And I think I learned with my second that didn't really work. I mean, we still had stitches, we still had trips to the hospital. Like I was
Yeah,
like, this doesn't work. So I think I was different with my second one. And I think I'm different with them now, that they're older and it's there are little things that I do that I think like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm scared when I'm alone, but I don't go jogging in the woods alone, or I don't go walking in the woods alone. There are things that I don't do that I'm sure are a symptom of that, the things that I don't do, but I just wouldn't even, but I would happily go walk in the woods with my kids. I mean, so, I mean, I think I do feel a level of safety. I mean, I have taken self-defense and I feel like I could fight now if I needed to. I've got, I try to update it once a year and I try to update my, my muscle memory of, what I could do if I needed to fight now. I feel like I could at least hurt somebody a little better than I could when I was 20. So I have a little, I think that empowers me a little bit to feel a little stronger and to feel like I could fight if I needed to. But thankfully I have never been in that situation again. So, I hope that I never have to use that, but I'm going to keep updating myself because, I had pepper spray with me the night of the attack and it was in Chris's backpack, like super helpful, right? I mean, unless you carry pepper spray with you at all times, unless you've sprayed pepper spray to see how it sprays, because you have to know how far will that spray, like how close does this person have to get to you before, and if it only has one or two sprays, like you need to be able to spray that at least one time to see how far it sprays. If you're empowering yourself with things, even guns or whatever, like I don't like guns. Like, I mean, I don't want to carry one. I don't, that's not something that will help me to feel safe. But if it does somebody else, that's fine. Like, do the things that make you feel safe. But for me, it's self-defense. Like that's the only thing that I know I'm going to have on myself all the time. So I can take self-defense classes and feel like I could fight if I needed to. And I think that that's helped me in maybe not being so scared when I'm alone.
right. That makes sense. That's an interesting detail. I don't think I ever heard that before, by the way. I didn't know that. Is that one of those things that you said you wish you would have done differently? Is that what you meant? Like maybe grabbing the pepper spray and thinking about it and
No,
trying?
I mean, I couldn't have. I mean, I couldn't have gotten the pepper spray out of the backpack if I wanted to. I mean, he went straight to Chris's backpack to go through it. So, I mean, I couldn't have grabbed. I'm saying that I didn't have it with me when I should have. That's, like it was on my keys and my keys were in Chris's backpack. So, I mean, like I didn't have it unless you're going to carry it with you at all times, and then it's not going to be useful. It's the only thing you're going to have with you at all times is your own power, your own body, your own fight will. So I mean, that's unless you are carrying it 24 hours anytime then you're not, it may not be helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, my sister was actually attacked in high school and bullied and beat up, and she went on to become a black belt in karate. So, yeah, I love those stories of like female empowerment and like just trying to do our best to even use whatever we have on us, right? Our hands,
Right.
feet.
Yeah. The strongest point of your body is your elbow.
It's your elbow.
So
No, I
yeah,
didn't.
it's your elbow.
Yeah, I mean, I started taking martial arts, but I didn't finish through with it. But this is inspiring too. I kind of feel like I want to go back into it. Um, uh, is there anything else you want to say? Any other comments you want to make? This has been just amazing to have this time with you.
Oh no, thank you. Thank you for having me. I think I probably what I really try to tell people when I'm out speaking is that, what I do, the reason I do what I do is that I want people to know that bad things happen and there's life after it does, that you can get through anything. You will not know the strength you have until you get in it. And, you will find strength that you never thought you had once, but you can get through anything. And it just takes sometimes a little bit of help, sometimes a little bit of a choice to get through it, but you can get through anything. And truly, that's, I mean, to know that I found strength when I'm 20 years old, to know that I had the strength to get through that, like I pretty much feel like I could get through almost anything today, that, that I could get through it. I think that we're put through these things because I've had bad things happen since then, right? So I mean, but I've developed good coping skills. I know what I need to do. And no, it's not always easy in the moment, but you can always go back to it, right? You can remember these things that helped you, and maybe they're going to help you again. And it's like you're building a toolkit of helpfulness that is going to help you for later. And that I think everybody deserves to be heard. I think everybody deserves to be believed. I think, just you and the number one thing I think people feel that they can't help their loved one. I think the number one thing that family members have told me is that they feel like there's nothing they can do. There's nothing that they can't choose to make the person do some healing, right?
Right.
And so I always tell people the one thing that they can do is to seek out all the resources in your community that help people that have been through trauma. So whether it's, an advocacy center, mental health help, support groups, things like that, organizations that help people in these kinds of situations. It's the one thing that you can do to know if that person were to come to you and be like, my life's falling apart, I don't know what to do. You could be like, oh my gosh, I just read this organization in our community. Well, that's what they do. Like, let's give them a call. Like, that's the one thing that you can do as a family member or a loved one is get yourself informed on things in your community that can help that loved one. If someday you can ever give them that information. Now, maybe it's never going to happen, but it's the one thing that you can feel like you can have control of. Cause I mean, I think that's not only does the survivor want to feel that control back, is the family members need to feel a little bit of control. And that's the one thing that they can control, because they can't make decisions for their loved one. So that's and that's super hard too. It's that the family and loved ones are going through their own healing, and you have to think about everybody's journey.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, we want to think about how it impacts the survivor's family as well. And also, I want to say that when somebody's looking for a therapist, it's really important to find a therapist that understands how this works, how a sexual assault can get stored on a cellular level in the body, because those memories can get trapped. And so sometimes just having talk therapy is not enough. You really got to understand the body's, like when your heart is racing or you feel sweaty or clammy. So I just want to put that into like working with a good trauma therapist is really important, not just like cognitive behavioral talk therapy. That's what I found really works well with a lot of survivors.
Yeah, and that you might have to go through several to find a good one. And that's, or
Yeah,
find one that you just want to talk to. It may not be the very first one you find. And it's kind of a process that you have to find the one that's right for you.
that's right. Well, thank you again. And Holly K. Dunn, Soul Survivor is the name of her book. I would highly recommend picking it up. And Holly, thank you so much again for your
Thank
time.
you. Yeah, the
Yeah,
book's available on Amazon. So if anybody wants to grab it on Amazon, that's the best place to buy it. Found that it's probably the best price too. So grab it on Amazon if you get a chance. And thank you so much for having me today. It's been such a treat.
oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, well, take care.
Thanks.
Okay. I stopped recording.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, thank you.
That was really easy. Thanks for making that so easy. And yeah, amazing. Really. I know for someone that's worked with like trauma my whole life, like I was so curious to ask you these questions and really understand it on your level. So thank you.
Yeah, and
But
the only thing I can't tell people is how I really got there. I don't a lot of what I've gone through, I don't have the words to really say this is exactly how I got there. It's been a lot of years of healing that have gotten me there.
yeah, right. Yeah, I know it a lot of years. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to ever like tell, there's lots of bad days, but and I always want to let people know that there are still bad days. Like there's always bad days, but
Yeah.
most of it's good.
Most of it's good. Yes, I like that too. Yeah. I get that. I get that. There's some days my attack didn't happen in an elevator, but there's some days I can't be in small spaces. I can't get into an elevator. My kids just have to understand I can't go on a water slide, the ones that are closed in the dark.
Enclosed in. I won't go on those either. I don't know if for me, I don't know if it is fear or if it's just that I didn't like, well, and my kids said that it knocked them all around. And I was like, well, that's the reason I didn't do it. But I'm like, I think there might be more to
I
it.
felt trapped. I felt really trapped. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not, I can't do
Oh,
this.
and have you ever gone like rock climbing, indoor rock climbing?
Yeah.
You have to climb up the wall and then you have to let go and like let
Yes.
yourself fall back. I couldn't let go.
Oh, you
It
were too
took
scared.
me, because I didn't have the trust to be able to like that it was going to catch me. And I mean, it took like people coming up, talking to me. Like, I mean, I could not let go.
That's
I
so
was like, okay.
interesting.
Yeah, I was like, I
Yeah.
think this is more than just I can't let go.
Yeah, like something else is going on here. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Can I ask you one more question? I know this is sort of like off the record, sort of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as we stop recording, but um sometimes I don't know how to sometimes like there's so much we're talking about, I don't know how to go back. I was curious, how like I know your body just like took over during the attack, right? Because I'm fascinated with trauma, right? And you can't help it. You're kind of in the moment. You don't even trying to survive it. 21, how many years it's been? What, you 23, right? What
Yeah.
would you was that?
26 years.
26, sorry, 23.
No, it's okay.
What would you and I know you couldn't have chose back then, but what would you have done differently? I'm curious.
Well, and I thought about that a lot. I don't know if I would have done anything differently because I think if I had done anything differently, I might have been killed. I mean, truly, I think I did exactly what I was supposed to do to survive it. I mean, I think one thing I did was to talk to him for a really long time, and he didn't have the adrenaline that he had to pick up that rock to hit Chris with. He didn't have that anymore to hit me with it, right? He hit me with something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, I don't know if I could have done anything differently because I think I may have died. Um,
Yep.
so I don't like to think about it. Like I think if I had done anything differently, I may not be here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I got you. Yeah. I
Yeah.
just
And I
wondered
mean,
I wondered if you played it over in your head.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, and I did, and I thought, maybe if there was a time that I could have ran, it's when he was dragging Chris down into the ravine. But like, how do you like leave the person you're there? How do you leave somebody and run away? Like, and you don't even know where you are. Like, how do you
Yeah.
run away from that? I mean, I just the thought of I think about it now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I still don't think I would run because I mean, you're hurting my friend. Like, I don't. I'm not gonna like run away from you're gonna hurt my what would it I mean, yeah, what would I have saved myself from? He was still gonna kill Chris and I would have saved myself from being raped and I would have like felt that guilt of
Oh,
I left Chris to die.
oh, that's
Like
horrible guilt. Oh,
I
that's
know
the
and
kind of guilt that I don't know if you can even get over guilt. You know what I
like
mean?
yeah, and
That's a
I mean, is
different kind
that
of
better?
guilt.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, probably not. Like so
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't really think about what I could have done differently because I don't think anything would have been better. I mean,
Yeah.
besides the Chris would have lived through this too. If I could change one thing, I mean, I don't ever want this to happen to anybody, but
Sure.
I'm really glad that this is my life's focus now, and this is like my advocacy work and what I'm able to do now because of this.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I would change is that Chris would have lived through it too, and all 15 victims of Resendez's would have lived through this, right? That there wouldn't be any people that died. If I could change anything, that's what I would change. That everybody would still be here.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know. Yeah, I got you. Did his family ever contact you, Renendez? Any
No,
any apologies or anything? Oh,
no, never got contacted. He had a daughter that I think about her. But you know, she's probably in Mexico. I mean, I've never been able to find her. It's not like I'm looking for her either, but
yeah,
nobody's ever contacted me from his family.
I was curious. Wow.
I did once get a message in Spanish that I don't know really who it was or what it was, and I didn't try to delve into it much. But I don't think it was anybody from his family.
Just somebody.
Yeah, just
Somebody Spanish, you don't know.
there's been
Okay.
some weird people that have contacted me. You know, and I mean you're gonna get that. I think when you're living publicly, you're gonna get that. Like you can't stop it. I mean, I've had, you know, some weirdos.
We talking about some creeps that have
Yeah, some
contacted you.
creeps, some like I mean somebody who sent me some artwork of like and I was working at Holly's house at the time and they sent me artwork of like a railroad and they did rocks and then wood as the railroad tracks and like it was artwork and I was like, you know, I'm not going to hang this up in my house. Like
Why?
I don't think I like this. Like I
Yeah,
was like
I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling
yeah,
it. Yeah.
just just
That's
some and I actually spoke in Frankfort, Kentucky, and they had to like have extra protection like because I got some weird voicemails before I went and spoke. And of course it was for the governor and I mean it was political, I'm sure. But it
oh,
was, you know, I got some like weird voicemails at work and I had to like send them off to the Secret Service in Kentucky and like they were
no.
like, "Oh, we know this guy. Like we've been in touch with this guy. Like it's
Oh,
and I
creepy.
was like, that I had never had that happen before. I'm like, this is super weird.
Yeah, it's super weird. Yeah, I agree. That's super weird. Oh man. You see, is that mainly your job right now is advocacy? You're just talk.
Yeah, I still go out and speak a lot. That's my, I mean, I'd say if the part that I love is still going out and speaking. Selling my book is still, I mean, doing that, but speaking is still my favorite part. I love the people that I meet. It's not so much my healing now in the stories, it's more awareness and basically trying to teach them something. But it's a lot of, it's really trying to be inspirational and really trying and I just love traveling. I love travel. I've always loved traveling. I love traveling, you know, before this ever happened. Like traveling is my favorite. So to be able to
Yeah.
travel around and meet people and meet these awesome people, like people that are now all in, I tell people that whenever I go out and speak, I'm like, you're in my support system now and you can't get out of it and you're stuck
Nice.
and sorry, you know, like you're in it and you're stuck in it. But the people that I have met out speaking has been just tremendous. I mean, mostly all amazing people.
Have you gone to CrimeCon then?
No,
You've heard of it, right?
yes, I have.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm going for the first time in Nashville and
Okay.
um I don't think I saw anyone on the schedule that was as a story like yours. If you ever think about it in the future, I think it's be amazing.
I know a lot of those you have to do like RFPs and stuff. And of course, it's just me doing all this. So, I mean,
What's that? What's that? What's an RF?
RFP is like for when you're at conferences will put out it's a request for a proposal. So they'll put out this request for if you want to speak, like send us this proposal of
Okay.
if you even want to be part of this. And I'm just not at that point yet. I
Awesome.
truly my speaking events come up only because by word of mouth mostly. I don't even really do a lot of marketing. So I, you know, I only work a bit and my kids are still small. So I mean but I'm only working, I try to only do like no more than 2 speaking engagements a month. And I mean you know, I'm only working as much as I want to right now.
That's good. You're controlling your life. That's perfect. Well, keep in touch. I hope we talk some other time in the future. Uh,
Yeah, I would love it.
yeah.
Now
Thanks.
you're
Thanks.
in my support system too. You can't get out of it.
Well,
So
thank you. If you ever
you're
come to Rhode Island, I have an Airbnb on my property.
okay.
It's an adorable little cabin. You are welcome to stay. We have Newport, Rhode Island, Narragansett. I live 2 minutes from the beach. I've got two girls. They're 18 and one's 14. They're great
Okay.
girls. It's just me and the girls. So, ever come to Rhode Island, we have to hang out. Seriously.
Okay, I'll let you know. We've been to Maine, but we have not been to, I've been to Rhode Island before I had kids, but I've never been with my kids. So,
Okay, I don't say there's a ton of things to do in
no,
Maine.
I know. But we do love hiking. We love
Yeah.
hiking and like being outdoors and just exploring. So, I mean that, we don't need a lot of things to do.
It's a long weekend. Nice long weekend in Rhode Island. Newport's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you again. I
All
appreciate
right, thanks. Have a good rest of your day.
it. Okay, thanks. Take care.
See ya. Bye.